Okay, let's talk about dispersion patterns of organisms in nature. First of all, dispersion refers to spacing, patterns of spacing. It's not the same as dispersal. Dispersal is movement outward, like, for example, after nesting, young songbirds will disperse from their natal territories, the places where they were born. So dispersal is not dispersion. Dispersion is spacing patterns. We generally recognize three types of dispersion. On the left here is a random pattern, and in the middle is a regular pattern of spacing, and on the right is a clumped pattern or patchy pattern. So it's interesting to think about what can produce these patterns. So first of all, let's think about plants. First of all, if you look at the random pattern on the left, that sort of implies a lack of ecological interaction. Like if those are individuals of one species of plant, then that kind of implies a lack of interaction among the individuals. The pattern in the middle, the regular pattern, implies some kind of interaction among the individuals, and the pattern on the right implies some kind of interaction either among the individuals or between the individuals and some aspects of the environment. So for plants, let's think about where the seeds would fall. Let's think about a wind-dispersed plant like a dandelion. You all know how dandelion seeds are dispersed, blowing in the wind. They might very well end up scattered in a random pattern like on the left. However, if the adult dandelions persist with that kind of pattern, then that implies a lack of interaction. Now, if they end up regularly spaced like in the middle, that could happen over time. Even though they initially were randomly spaced, they could end up regularly spaced. What could produce that? Well, competition between the individuals could produce that, like competition for moisture or for soil fertility, or in some cases competition for light could produce that by producing mortality of some individuals, so that they may start out more closely together and some individuals will die and thin out that area, so that in the end they end up regularly spaced. The clump pattern on the right, when it comes to plants, would very often be the result of patchiness in the resources, like for example, patchiness in soil fertility or in moisture. If you look at the band in the lower right, if you are out in the desert and you see a band of trees in the distance like that, you might suspect that there's a creek there, right? If these are cottonwoods or willows, those are trees that like to grow along moisture, and so the concentration of moisture along a riverbank or the edge of a lake could produce that kind of clump pattern. Excuse me. Now, if we're talking about animals, then some different things can happen. So, for example, again, the randomly spaced pattern on the left would imply a lack of interaction between the individuals. In other words, they're not really affecting each other's occurrence. In the middle, regular spacing would often result from territorial behavior. So, for example, if you were to map out all the robin nests in a section of town, it's very likely that the spacing between the nests would be not perfectly regular, but somewhat regular like this. And territorial behavior produces that, right? Where individuals defend a certain area against conspecifics, against members of the same species. Territoriality in animals is usually within a species, so robins will defend their nesting territory from other robins, but not from other kinds of birds. The pattern on the right in animals, it could reflect patchy distributions of resources as it does in plants, but it can also reflect behavior in a prey species, in something that gets eaten by other animals, like certain kinds of birds. They will often flock together as a defense against predation. Small fish will do this also, right? When we watched the videos of the open ocean, we saw a lot of cases where small fish were sticking in a tight mob like this and basically trying not to be the one that gets picked off by the predators on the outside of the school. The same thing will happen in birds. On the other hand, some animals, some predators, hunt in packs. Like you probably all know that wolves hunt in packs, so do African lions. And so patchiness in that case would be the predators living and hunting in packs, which enables them to take down larger prey. Some other kinds, members of the dog family, like foxes, are more solitary. They don't hunt in packs. And many cats, unlike the African lion, are very solitary, like mountain lions. So anyway, so these are some of the factors that can affect patterns of dispersion in plants and animals.